Hello and welcome back to the Healthy Shift Worker podcast. I'm your host, Audra Starkey. Today we're joined by Daniel Ebbett, founder of Block Blue Light, a company that supplies science-backed blue light glasses and blue blocking technology to help mitigate some of the effects of artificial and mistimed light exposure. Daniel's journey began in 2016 when he was battling chronic insomnia and debilitating migraines. After trying everything from sleeping pills to natural remedies, nothing seemed to work for him until he began doing his own research, which revealed a hidden culprit: artificial blue light. Discovering its impact on circadian rhythms, melatonin production and eye health, Daniel realised his struggles were rooted in overexposure to artificial light. Frustrated by ineffective blue light glasses on the market, he set out to create a better solution, and Block Blue Light was born. Stay tuned to learn how light impacts your health in a multitude of ways and what you can do about it. Alrighty. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for joining me on the podcast today, all the way from Hamilton in New Zealand. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to getting into all things sleep and light and health and all that.
Yeah, brilliant. As it's a big topic, obviously, for our audience, and I'm really looking forward to chatting because obviously sleep deprivation, sleep disruption, like they're all massive big struggles with my shift working audience. But before we launch into it, Daniel, I'd love to sort of hear your story a little bit. What led you to being so focused on wanting to help with sleep? I don't think shift work is your background. Is that right?
No, shift work is not my background, and nor it's been in the world of sleep or light and all that. For me, it kind of was born out of a bit of a necessity and desperation in my own health.
Okay.
That started about 10 years ago, where I was just moving into the corporate world and starting to build up my career out of university. And so I shipped off out of New Zealand over to Sydney, Australia, to start working in a large insurance company. And kind of my aspirations back then was just trying to climb the corporate ladder and sort of down that route and have a successful career in that world. I did consider myself quite a healthy person. Coming out of university, I was really focused on ensuring that I felt good and I could perform well. So, I had a big focus on what I was eating and exercising. And at the time, I was actually competing in powerlifting and kind of at a national level as well. So I was taking things quite seriously.
Yeah.
So then started in the office job, typical office kind of setting, and very quickly, within the space of a couple months, I was having severe insomnia. So I was waking up at like 2-3 in the morning, couldn't get back to sleep, and getting quite severe migraine attacks during the day, which I was quite puzzled about because I was like, I'm doing what I considered to be all the things that you need to do to be healthy, right? If you eat well and you exercise, there's nothing else to really do to take the boxes of being healthy.
Yeah.
But I guess that kind of thought process got flipped upside down when I was becoming very unhealthy because I couldn't sleep. I had severe sleep deprivation, which was causing a whole bunch of like hormonal dysregulations, and I wasn't able to perform during the day. My mood was out of whack, my energy levels, everything was kind of really taking a downward spiral. And I kind of took the approach that most people would when things go wrong with your health is, I went to my doctor, my GP, and was sort of seeking assistance to try and work out what was going on. And that led me down a path for about a year of being prescribed all sorts of sleeping tablets to off-label kind of like antidepressants, antipsychotic medication, which didn't work. It honestly just made me feel worse. Like it was, it kind of knock you out, but you'd feel just drugged out and spaced out kind of during the day. So I continued to persist in going back to the doctor and say, this is not working, this is not the problem sort of thing. And it kind of got to the point after a while when they sort of came back to me like, well, there's actually nothing wrong with you, like it's in your head sort of thing, because they couldn't come up with a definitive answer or a solution. But what all they were either trying to do was band-aid a bigger problem, right? They weren't trying to actually understand the root cause. So at that point when I was kind of told that, I kind of just was like, no, I don't accept that sort of thing. So I And I could see that that system wasn't really set up to help someone uncover root cause analysis and get healthier. At that point, I knew that wasn't the right place to be looking. So I did start to just really do my own research because I was getting quite desperate. I knew what it felt like to feel good and feel healthy and have energy and have a great mood, but I didn't have any of that anymore. It was a long time ago when the wealth of knowledge we have available at our disposal around health really wasn't available back then. It was, you're sort of trawling the internet for forums and other sorts of ways, like these sort of podcasts didn't really exist. What I did do is I just stumbled on a neurosurgeon who's based in the US called Dr. Jack Kruse, and he's becoming a little bit more widely known today's world, but he certainly wasn't known at all back then. And he had a forum, he had a book, and he had a lot of blogs, very technical based blogs talking about quantum biology or circadian biology as well, which is looking at essentially at a very, very high level. He was really discussing how light really governs a lot of the biological processes in the human body, and how a lot of what he called health gurus have got it all wrong. We're so heavily focused on what we eat. And everyone's debating whether we should be paleo or keto or this or that. And he was kind of saying, well, that doesn't actually matter. Like, if you're under the wrong light environment and your environment is not set up how it should be, like, it doesn't matter what you eat. You could have the perfect supposed diet, right? And you can still be unhealthy. And to me, that was like quite eye-opening, because back then I was like, no, like, it was quite confronting to my own thoughts, which were, you need to eat healthy and you need to exercise and then you'll be fine. And even back then I was like, oh, maybe I'm not doing those things enough. Maybe I'm not being healthy enough with my eating, and which was ultimately leading into a spiraling down to a worse path of health, because it was actually putting more stress on the body, trying to diet more, trying to restrict certain like foods more, and then trying to exercise more, and actually raising more cortisol, more adrenaline, more stress on the body. So what I do is really just deep dive into his work. It's very technical, and he certainly doesn't put his work in a way that the common man or woman can understand. But yeah, I mean, so at a very, very high level, I started to apply some of those concepts around looking at my light environment. And what I very quickly realized is it had significantly changed in the time that I had moved over to Australia and had started working in an office. I realized that I was really getting very little exposure to any kind of natural environment of light, because I'd be getting up very early in the morning and I would be going to the office, and I'd be working under artificial light all day, fluorescent lights in the office, a lot of screens around me. And then, I would stay in the office all day, and then I would leave, when it's kind of dark outside, and I'd go to the gym, spend a couple of hours under artificial lighting there.
Oh, yeah.
Then come home, and then I'd also need to work at night. I was kind of lumped with this work to do at like 11 p.m. at night. So I was kind of like the new guy, the graduate sort of working. So then I'd be on screens again at like 11 p.m. at night. And so like my whole kind of day was all revolving around just artificial light exposure and no natural light exposure. So what I started to do was just apply some very high level concepts of, okay, how do I actually try and structure my day around more natural light environments, or at least trying to offset some of the artificial light environments I was being exposed to. And so what that looked like back then, the term blue light glasses didn't even exist. The knowledge of blue light wasn't really a thing. But what I did is I found these glasses off Amazon in the US that could block a significant portion of blue light. And so they're quite big safety glasses. So I ordered them in. They took about a month or so to come, and then I started sort of wearing these big ugly glasses in the office, and people were giving me some very, very strange looks, but things we do for health.
Absolutely.
And then combining that with looking at my light exposures during the day and trying to just get some more natural light into my day-to-day environment. For the first time in almost a year, I started to see some actual positive changes. So that's at that point I was like, I'm going to kind of double down on this, right? I'm seeing things that, not all these drugs and stuff that weren't doing anything. Now I'm just simply like wearing some $20 safety glasses and going outside. And now I'm like seeing positive changes in my sleep, and migraines are stopping and stuff. And Yeah, and I'm sort of like, well, you've got, we're so advanced and all these different like treatments and medications and stuff. But yet, for me, like the most simplest thing of going outside and wearing glasses was like the solution, which just sounded like kind of crazy, right? And so from that point, within after applying that whole concept and really deep diving on this stuff, within the space of a couple of months, I had pretty much reversed most of my insomnia, my migraine attacks, my hormones were starting to re-regulate. I started to feel good, had more energy, and mood was great. So I guess at that point, I was like, I can't be the only person that's going through this, right? Like, I didn't feel like my lifestyle was too different from most common workers being under that artificial kind of environment. At that point, I was like, well, like a lot of people probably get to my situation, but probably then just give up or just continue to accept a subpar feeling lifestyle, or just continue to take the prescription drug sort of thing. So it kind of led me on a bit of a mission to try and like get the word out there and sort of get people to understand this sort of stuff. So I had no intention of becoming a businessman or starting a business, but so well, let's just order in 20 pairs of those glasses, and let's try and start up a website and just like start talking about it and seeing what happens from there. Fast forward to today. I mean, it's a much widely known topic. We've obviously continued to educate and evolve as a business to continue to provide solutions to help people live in the modern world and not be so like detrimentally affected in their health. So, to more interface into the modern world and utilize technology, not, and be able to stay healthy.
Yeah, amazing story. And I think there'd be a lot of people out there that could truly resonate with what you're saying, Daniel. And just hearing it, you can tell that your lifestyle was not healthy. Taking a step back, you obviously couldn't at the time because you're into it. But when you look back and when you're hearing you talking about it now, like you've obviously spending 95% of your time indoors, and we have to be truly naive to think today that that's not having some kind of a negative ramification on our health. But at the time, as you said, everyone's about diet, exercise, that's all it is. And so kudos to you. Dr. Jack Kruse, I'm very familiar with his work. It's mind-boggling with what he's doing. It's quite amazing. So what are some of the things that you've come across in your research or learned about the detrimental effects of the blue light? And obviously in the office environment, our listeners, a lot of them would be working in call centres, hospitals, all that kind of thing. What have you learnt that really is, from a scientific perspective, is some of the causations of this toxic light on our health?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, ultimately, and this is a little bit of a like why people get a little bit confused, is ultimately blue light isn't bad for us, and nor should it be avoided. It's more applying the context of the types of blue light we're receiving or how it's being received to us, because blue light is very, very essential for health as well. And so the main issue we look at is like, what's the difference between the indoor artificial light we're being exposed to and the biological impacts versus natural light. So if we look at the two, you've got natural light, which is full spectrum light from the sun. That has plenty of blue light in it. And, the argument from people against us is, the sky is blue. Should we be avoiding the sky, right? And it's like, no, of course not. Like, that's silly, right? Like, getting outside and being under natural light is very, very beneficial to, to our mood and our energy levels. Sort of the full spectrum light, the infrared light, particularly the blue light, is responsible for making us feel awake, alert, and regulating a lot of neurotransmitters in the brain as well. So what we see in nature, though, is everything's in balance. So if you look at full spectrum light, the blue light is very much in balance with, green, yellow, orange, and red light, infrared light, and UV light. So you're getting a full spectrum of all the light coming in, being exposed to your skin, eyes, everything, and it's all having different biological impacts within the body. However, when we come into the indoor light, artificial light, very, very high amounts of blue light are still present, but then they've almost stripped out all the core amount of the yellow, orange, and red light is pretty much non-existent in the indoor light. Now, why is that a problem? So why that's a problem is because you can look at light is all measured in wavelengths, essentially. The measurement is nanometers. So you've got blue light right down one end of the spectrum, and then you've got kind of red light right at the other end of the spectrum. So blue light being down one end of the spectrum means the wavelengths are very short. And because they're very short, they carry a high amount of energy in them. And so when you isolate that kind of light and you're being exposed to it, the high energy light is very damaging. So it causes a lot of oxidative stress, cell damage, cell breakdown to us, which does actually happen in nature as well. But there's always an antidote in nature, and that's red light, which is a very long wavelength. So it does almost the opposite of what blue light does. It stimulates like cellular regeneration. You may have heard of like red light therapy, which is kind of like harnessing those very beneficial wavelengths. So when you're outdoors and it's imbalance, I mean, it's almost like offsetting each other, right? But you come indoors, you strip out all the beneficial wavelengths that are actually responsible for that regeneration, cellular repair, and only have ones that are causing like oxidative stress and cellular damage, rather than the net effect is quite harmful to us. What we can normally see as a kind of symptom of that overexposure to high energy blue light is eye strain, headaches, migraines, like cellular damage, or even damage to the skin. It's and when you look at the environments like hospitals and stuff like these environments are particularly very, very high in blue light because they're using very bright fluorescent lighting, which is one of the worst types of lighting to be exposed to. And so that's kind of one of the differences around like what blue light being bad for you. It's more like the context of it being artificial blue light, and in the environment of not having it's almost like the absence of the other frequencies of light not being there that makes the blue light bad for you.
Yeah. So you've got that sort of sharp pointing blue light spike, as opposed to what you're saying, more like a rainbow being outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, one other very important part of the whole, how we look at it all is more also about in nature, like times of day and when you are being exposed to blue light and when you shouldn't be exposed to blue light. So the natural light source that we have is the sun, and that is only present for daylight hours, right? So, I mean, once the sun sets, we're biologically not wired or set up to be receiving those frequencies anymore. And the main reason, how that works from a biological standpoint is primarily our eyes are light receptors. Most people will know that light comes in your eyes to produce like vision, so you can see. So we've got particular receptors in our eyes that are called rods and cones for that. Most people probably would have heard of that, but they actually then discovered in the late 90s another set of receptors in the eyes, which are non-visual receptors, photoreceptors, and they're called melanopsin receptors. So they're taking and they're actually activating under the presence of blue light, because blue light's only present in the daytime. So that's coming into the eyes, it's sending a signal into the central clock system in our brain to tell our brain what time of the day it is, and that helps regulate what's called a circadian rhythm in the brain, or also known as a body clock, right? So our body runs off a 24-hour cycle, but it has its own way of telling the time, and its way of telling the time is through using those melanopsin receptors and essentially using light, in particular frequencies of light being either present or not present in our environment. And so what happens though now as the sun sets, we don't all just turn off we don't just live in the dark. We turn on all the lights in our home so we can continue to see and be awake. But those lights that we turn on and the screens we look at and the technology we consume is all very, very high in blue light. And so our brain, our ancestral brain and our biology essentially is doing what it's designed to do, which is tell the blue light telling your brain that it's like solar noon, essentially, the high amounts of blue light are in there. So what that continues to do is instruct the brain to then tell the body to continue to produce wake hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, and keep us awake and alert, because that's exactly what we should be doing during the daytime, as opposed to starting to lower those wake hormones down and allow hormones that are more responsible for regeneration, rest and repair to start to rise, which rise in the absence of blue light. And that's one of the most common ones we know is called melatonin, which is commonly known as the sleep hormone. So what we're doing is essentially we're not allowing, or we're potentially allowing it, but we're phase shifting it. So we keep all those lights on in our home at night, and then eventually we turn them off. So now the body is it's very, very confused. It doesn't understand, well, hold on, what's it like, what time of the day it is? I'm trying to regulate this 24-hour cycle, but there is no 24-hour cycle of darkness and light anymore. It's more with swaying towards a more illuminated lit environment, and not actually allowing enough darkness to allow the natural day and night cycles to play out how they should be.
Yeah, I guess something that I sort of often mention is we kind of harp on vitamin D a lot in the health and wellbeing space, but I kind of like to refer to that we have this deficiency in vitamin D from our vitamin darkness, because we're just drowning in so much light all the time, aren't we? Which is, it's bound to have a negative effect on our health. So what other sources have you learnt that, I'm just trying to think, people's home, because this is so big. It's just, obviously shift workers are, so prone to the negative effects of this disruption in our sleep. But we're talking about children that are potentially sitting this close to screens all the time, and even adults. We're not, as you said, we're staying awake till the wee hours. What other sources in our house that are playing a role in this blue light exposure?
Pretty much most digital devices. So anything with a screen on it now is in what we call an LED backlit screen. So they're like, certainly, so we talk about phone screens, tablets,
even Wi-Fi,
TVs. Yeah, well, Wi-Fi is another. That is also a frequency as well, which is like non-native that we're expected to be exposed to as well, which has actually been shown in research to lower melatonin as well, which isn't great for conducing of sleep. But the biggest culprit in our homes is all the overhead lighting, and it's certainly a modern problem. I mean, if we kind of look at the evolution, of lighting, so, before electricity, we had candles. And before that, if we go back to caveman days, right, it's fire was our source of lighting in the post-sunset. And none of that type of like candles or fire don't have any blue light or green light in them. So there's yellow, orange, and reds that make up that type of lighting. And then when we actually moved to lighting, which we've used all the way from the invention of a light bulb until, approximately maybe 10 years ago, even in the last 5 years, it's really ramped up. The incandescent bulb and the halogen type bulb is very, very similar to fire. It produces a lot of heat and it produces a lot of infrared light, and it produces very small or low amounts of blue light. So it's not perfect for the evening, but it wasn't considered too much of a problem. And then there's been a push, in recent years through governments around sustainability and energy consumption. So there's been a big push to move to LED lighting. So LED lighting is considered more sustainable for the planet, but not maybe sustainable for the life that's on the planet as one issue that I would look at and go, that hasn't been considered around how it's impacting not only human biology, all animals and everything that's kind of being consumed is consuming the light as well. So LED lighting is very different from the incandescent lighting. It's not a heat source lighting, so it's not doing this kind of the similar thing to what a fire is doing. It's pretty much using specific diodes, and they're using predominantly the blue light frequencies to create light. So we get that white light. So white light is primarily made up of blue light. So now we're in our home environment where we've all got LED lights in our home, because essentially you can't buy the incandescent lighting anymore. And so we're just getting this very, very, very blue light that 10 years ago we never used to get in the home.
So we're drowning in this light that's just not natural. As you said, even the plant life, I just think, I'm looking around my house at the moment, all the poor plants. I think of them at night. It's confusing their little clock system as well. So let's talk about mitigation, because obviously we've got this environment, we're kind of stuck with it at the moment, although there is definitely this shift, because as you said, 10 years ago there wasn't much discussion about this, but more and more awareness around it is great. So things are, I think, shifting a little bit in regards to that. But what can people do, I guess, and particularly, I guess, focusing on our shift workers, even the night shifters that are having to work under these conditions? It's impossible to do unless you're working under a mine, underground, or something with a torch, maybe. They're going to be exposed to light. What recommendations and suggestions for our audience to help them mitigate some of the effects, because we can't avoid it all?
Yeah, especially like with shift work, it's a really tricky one, and it's a question we get a lot because it can be a confusing topic to work around, and it's quite interesting. Like shift work is being now classified as a class 2 carcinogen, right? So it's like now it's almost like up there with, and it's purely around the light exposure and circadian rhythm disruption that's putting it up there with essentially smoking. So there are ways to start to mitigate that and make it so it's not having such a detrimental effect on our health, but it does require a bit more kind of smart planning around what we're doing in particular environments, because most shift workers can't actually influence, or they don't have control over all the lighting in the hospitals and where they're working. So it's around using particular ways of structuring your lifestyle and using particular tools to help with that. So what we do have a general set of recommendations for shift workers, and generally what we look at is obviously you're going to be working when you're supposed to be sleeping and sleeping when you're supposed to be working, which isn't ideal anyway, but you can start to still entrain the ability for the body to still rest and digest and be awake when it needs to be. And so what we would say at nighttime when you're working is still to start to mitigate or bring down the levels of blue light, not to zero, because you'll start to fall asleep. So if you completely remove the absence of blue light, say putting on a set of blue blocking glasses that eliminated blue light, it would be quite difficult to actually do your job. You're going to be feeling a bit sluggish, tired, wanting to sleep. But what we would look at is using a pair of specific glasses that are more significantly reducing it down to bring it a bit more in balance with the other frequencies. So it's not, having a significant increase in blue light over the reds, yellows and oranges. So that's the first thing. We normally look at using a set of what's considered our strongest daytime glasses, which are like a yellow lens, and they've got a yellow tint to them. Yep. And they would significantly help whilst people are on their shift. And then generally what we recommend is probably approximately an hour before the shift is finished is to then shift over to a set of 100% blue blocking glasses that are going to completely eliminate all blue light. So you're starting to almost instruct the brain to start to wind down because you're coming off and you will be sleeping soon. Because what a lot of shift workers do is they're under all this light, they're actually jacked up and wired through this light, and they finally get home and then they just can't sleep. They're just wired from it, and they're not even able to get sufficient sleep. So if we chuck on those other glasses, move to a night suit glasses an hour before, keep them on, and then obviously once you go home is then to keep them on, and then in the home environment not be turning on all the artificial lights, but then obviously you're probably going to be going to sleep. And then what you need to be doing is creating a complete blackout environment so the brain can see or understands this true darkness, which becomes a bit more challenging when it is actually light outside. So things like either blackout curtains or like a proper blackout sleep mask should be used while sleeping as well. It's kind of, it's not the perfect scenario because it is light outside. If you can still get restorative and restful sleep and allow melatonin to rise and flood through the body, it's going to help. Melatonin is a very, very powerful antioxidant in the body. So it's kind of, if we continue to suppress that over the long term, it's really you're going to have poor health outcomes. So this, even though turn the dark and light cycles upside down, you can start to use like the glasses and the mitigation techniques around light when you want to sleep to help, increase that ability to get that restful sleep.
Yeah, really good advice. And I hope particularly our night shifters are listening to this, because to really appreciate just how important it is to be mitigating some of this toxic light, because as you said, it's not great. I'm all about promoting, shift workers to be the healthiest that they possibly can. But there are statistics out there that, let's face it, it's not great news, but you've got to do whatever you possibly can. Wearing the funky looking glasses, yes, you might be, one of the few at the time starting to wear them and be a little bit self-conscious of it. But if we're talking about your health, this is huge. And so for a night shift, you're recommending obviously the yellow for the reason of it's just going to be blocking out a little bit of the blue light, but not everything, obviously, because it's going to make them sleepy. So are you suggesting maybe then migrating, because I know that you do have an assortment of colours, so starting off in the yellow from the start of the shift maybe, and then through till, say, if they're finishing at 6 o'clock at night, transition to maybe the orange, because, the red ones obviously, it's likely to knock them out and they've got to make it home.
Yeah.
Not fall asleep in the car on the way home. We don't want that.
Correct. Yeah. So because we've got different levels even in the night range, and so because obviously we've got a red lens which eliminates a lot of the green light frequencies as well.
Yeah.
When we look at certain research that does show that green light also can suppress melatonin, but again, it makes the ability to see through the lens, it restricts vision and alters colours more. So you're coming, in the last hour of the shift, moving to the amber tinted ones is a really good start. And then once you get home, going to the red glasses, if not 100% necessary. This is in the perfect world if you want to have a set of everything, and putting on the red ones right before you really want to go to sleep. And then off the back of that, after you go to sleep and then you wake up, is then actually getting out, like depending on, I personally haven't been a shift worker, so I can't really relate, but I assume one would still probably be waking up and it's daylight outside, and then you're starting your day, would go outside and just get as much natural light that's still available in the environment before then starting it all again. And I guess the other thing is when coming off, if you're just doing it, if you're only doing kind of a batch of shifts and then you're coming back to a normal routine, is the key to trying to flip the circadian rhythm back, is just getting outside as much as possible, because that natural light is going to start to re-regulate your day and night cycles back. So that's a really key thing. And it's the same with jet lag or anyone that's been traveling internationally, is that as soon as you get off plane, or you need to kind of like sync up with the current environment again. So that's where getting outside as much as possible really helps that.
Yeah. And for our listeners, this getting outside that Daniel keeps talking about, you might just think this is it's too simplistic to make any difference. And like you said right at the beginning, in your own office environment, it works. This is a thing. Mother Nature really doesn't make any mistakes. And I think for a lot of us, though, we discount things that are free. We sort of want something, or we've been, I guess, trained to think that health needs to be really complicated. But by doing those foundational things, by just getting outside more, truly can make a difference. We always feel better, don't we, just from being outside. The fresh air, even better if you can throw your shoes off and do a bit of grounding, just never underestimate the power of, and it just helps to getting out of your workplace alone helps to kind of recalibrate and give you a bit of a reset button as well. So all right, you touched on a little bit before, and I do notice behind you that you've got a little bit of a red light therapy gadget just from where you're sitting. Do you mind sharing to us a little bit more about how those things work?
Yeah. So red light therapy is harnessing very specific frequencies of red light and near-infrared light, which are very, I guess, very kind of bioactive in the body. So, and when we kind of look at what's happening there, is we're using it in kind of very high intensities, and we're using it in very close distance, so that light can kind of penetrate into the body, into the cells. And so normally kind of the range of light, it's, normally when we look at it as the research, it's using like 630 and 660 nanometer red light, and then in the near infrared light, it's like 810, 830, and 850 nanometer light. What that's doing is that light is it helps our mitochondria, which are kind of the mitochondria in our cells. They're what produce energy for our cells, and the energy currency they produce is called ATP. Mm-hmm. So what red light therapy and these specific frequencies of red light do is they allow the mitochondria to produce ATP more efficiently, can produce more ATP with less effort. So this particular biological process, which is called there's a cytochrome C oxidase as a part of the process of producing ATP. And so what red light, those specific frequencies of light do is they donate their energy to upregulate that production system. So what that means at a high level is if the cell can produce energy a lot more efficiently and a lot more of it, it can run more optimally. So what that looks like is from in the cell itself. It depends on where the light's been shone, but it can help repair and regeneration happen a lot quicker. It can help reverse a lot of conditions, injuries, joint pain, arthritis. When it's used on the brain, there's a lot of research around brain conditions like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, particularly around the skin is another one where we've seen it being used for like scar healing, wrinkles, fine lines, blemishes, all that sort of thing as well. Mm-hmm. But it's a very wide-ranging benefits of the therapy because it's kind of working at the cell layer. If the cell can function more optimally, it kind of brings the body back into a state of health again. Yes, it's a very it is becoming more widely known, the benefits of it. And I think today there's over 8,500 studies on PubMed around the use of light therapy. So yeah, it's very, very big. And if we look at it a very kind of step back, it's looking at harnessing those very, very beneficial frequencies of light that we get from the sun. We do get infrared light from the sun. We do get red light from the sun. It's kind of taking those and supercharging them essentially because the lifestyles we live, we really not really getting those frequencies in it as much anymore. We're not outside all day where, the infrared and the red light is what we're getting. So red light therapy in a way is kind of supplementing that lifestyle where we're not getting enough of it as well.
As you said, there's certainly more and more research coming out about it, which is fascinating. So what recommendation would you suggest for people that don't live in places like we do, lucky enough Australia and New Zealand, that we get so much natural light exposure? Would things like the red light therapy, and I don't know if you can comment on the SAD lamps for people that live in like the likes of Alaska and Northern Europe, what can they do? Because obviously they don't have the luxury of so much natural light that we do. Do SAD lamps help, or embracing more of the red light therapy? What would you suggest for those people?
Yeah, so SAD lamps is an interesting one. So obviously SAD, it stands for seasonal affective disorder. And so what that is, if you break what that is down, is actually caused by, it's a persistent caused by a lack of light, right? So we're not getting enough of the beneficial light that we should get during the day because it's winter or the light cycles are very short. And because that type of light is very much infrared light and blue light coming into our system during the daytime allows our body to create serotonin. And then serotonin is a neurotransmitter that regulates our mood and our energy levels, right? So then if you're not getting enough serotonin, you start to have a low mood and low energy. And that's essentially what depression is. But SAD is one of the only depressive disorders that's conclusively caused by a lack of light. It's actually a very easy one to look at and go, okay, well, you don't need to take a drug to fix this.
Yeah.
So SAD lamps are a little bit of a problem. And I mean, we've looked at that. And so we produce our own SAD lamp now because the issue with an SAD lamp or a conventional one is that it blasts out a very, very high amount of blue light and it doesn't have any of the other spectrums in it. So whilst it does fix one problem, it creates a whole host of other problems. So blasting yourself with a whole bunch of blue light in the morning and during the day is certainly going to help fix your SAD because it's going to upregulate those pathways to produce more serotonin and to upregulate your mood and energy levels. But it's also it's doing it, probably it's upregulating it too much, because you're just getting blue light at a very, very high amounts, and you're getting no red light, no infrared light. It's really not replicating going outside and getting the natural light to naturally, have your mood and energy levels where it should be. And so in the short term, yep, great, it will fix an immediate problem, but over the long term, it's not going to really set you up to be in a good place, because it's going to cause a lot of those symptoms we talked about of overexposure to too much blue light, but it's also then going to start to upregulate things too much, which can then look to be like anxiety can start to kick in as well, and just the feeling being a bit too wired from it.
Right.
So we take a bit more of an approach where these sort of tools should kind of more replicate what nature's like. So we've created an SAD lamp, but we use full spectrum light in it. So it's got lots of blue light, but it's all balanced with the red, orange, and yellow light. And then we also incorporate the infrared spectrum as well. So while we incorporate the infrared spectrum into it as well, is that kind of offsets any ability to cause all that cellular damage and breakdown and oxidative stress that very high amounts of blue are doing. So you're getting all the benefits of the blue to actually combat the SAD, but you're now just mitigating any effects, or you're now putting in the regenerative wavelengths as well to just make sure that, hey, I'm not fixing one problem here whilst causing a whole bunch of other problems over here.
Yeah, fantastic. It's good that you've obviously, I've been on your website. I can see that the amount of research that you've done is quite phenomenal. And the thing is, not everything's the same, isn't it? And I guess that's a good segue to my next question: is how do people work out the actual blue light blockers that actually are doing what they say they should do versus possibly the $20 ones that you bought 10 years ago, even though you notice some difference? How does the everyday consumer, because it's a bit of a minefield out there.
There's a big minefield out there now. Obviously, when things gain a bit of popularity, you have a lot of opportunists come in to make a quick buck sort of thing.
Yeah.
And now the industry is quite hard to sift through and know what's good and what's not. There are a couple of kind of like high-level kind of rules you can apply when you're kind of shopping around. The first thing is 99% of them will be these like clear lens glasses out there that will either be like a coating or they'll be more fashion focused. A normal red flag is when you kind of try to find the specifications of like what light spectrums they're filtering and by how much. And if it's not even there, but they're just like, oh, it's a blue light filter.
Yeah.
They really don't understand the science of it.
Yeah.
Most of those are probably filtering about 5 to 20% of blue light. The main issue is not even that percentage, it's where in the spectrum it's actually filtering it. And we've tested them all, I've looked at all this sort of stuff. And so the main issue we've got is the blue light that is emitted from LED light sources, so our screens and overhead lighting. It emits a very narrow band of blue light, and that ranges. So blue light as a whole ranges from 400 nanometers to 500, but the exposure we're getting, the peak is at 455 nanometers. So, I mean, it's ranging from about 450 to 460 is where blue light that we're being exposed to. But most of the glasses that are on the market will filter up to 420 nanometers, and they won't actually filter anything past 420. But we're not actually being exposed to 420 nanometer blue light from artificial light sources. We're only getting 420 nanometer light from natural light sources.
Interesting.
The question is, what are the glasses doing?
Yeah.
Well, technically, they'll put marketing claims around filtering, blocking UV light. But I'm indoors, and I'm not being exposed to UV light indoors, nor should I be blocking it anyway. But that's probably another thing. Potentially you would want to block it if it was being isolated in an artificial form, but not. Yeah. So, I mean, it's all about kind of how things are propositioned to people. And I've heard UV light, you need to block it, but they don't actually realise it's not even an issue indoors from artificial light sources.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one thing to look out for, is kind of what I call like the clear lens, like blue blocking glasses scam that's out there, like or just misleading claims on it. They'll sort of talk about all the benefits we've talked about today around sleep optimization and eye strain and headaches and migraines and all these great things. But the reality is, unless you can actually see some relatively good evidence that they know what they're talking about, and they should be able to any company that's reputable should be able to produce you like a lens spectrum testing report, which actually breaks down every single frequency and how much it's actually filtering it by.
Yep.
So either they'll have that published on their website, or if they don't, they should be able to produce it to you if you ask for it.
Yep.
And that's what you're looking for, particularly around the daytime, is it lowering down that 455 nanometer blue light.
Yep.
And then I guess when what we talk about in the nighttime and mitigating it at nighttime, I mean, there's no such thing as a clear lens glasses that block blue light. It's not possible. Like, physics doesn't allow it. And as crazy as it seems, there are some companies making wild claims about their clear lens like glasses looking like perfectly normal glasses, and they're eliminating all blue light. So that's just not possible. So at nighttime, it needs to be this amber lens. It needs to be a red lens. But not only that, it also needs to have kind of some spectral analysis testing done to show it is eliminating it all, because you can have a red lens and you can have an amber lens, but it might be blocking like 90% of blue light and still letting 10% through. And that 10% is enough to trigger those pathways of wakefulness. So it's still going to suppress your melatonin. It's still going to essentially tell the brain it's daytime because there's still blue light in the environment. So, I mean, you've got to just make sure that you're not just jumping on and finding the coolest set of frames. You're kind of looking into like what are the more detailed specifications of the lenses.
Yeah. Really, I think, really, really good advice. And I think I'll actually make sure that we'll put a reference to, because I know you do have a lens spectrum report of or version of in your own website, which is, it's really, I like the graphics that you've got that literally breaks it down what particular lens does what and so forth. Yeah, really, really, really good advice. Well, this has been a great conversation. Daniel, is there anything, so I'm just being mindful of your time, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to add that maybe I haven't covered, a point of reference that you think that your listeners or our listeners would actually benefit from? There's something that I've missed?
Probably the only other thing is, like, we've kind of discussed the glasses in a lot of detail, and they're a great entry-level way to come in and start to like really start to optimize your light environment. I guess beyond that, it's really starting to look at the lights in the home and again, they're our biggest exposure. So you can start to look at, I talked about like LEDs being not great for us, but then, incandescent not being available anymore. Technically, when I say LEDs aren't great for us, it's what I'd consider a conventional LED. So we've actually reverse engineered LEDs to not have the issues of the conventional ones, and you can start to use more what I call optimized circadian friendly lighting that's actually doesn't have blue light in it for the daytime, or for the nighttime, does have full spectrum light in it for the daytime. So you can start to optimize an indoor environment to be not certainly a replacement for outdoor environment, but to be closer to what you would be exposed to outdoors as well.
Yeah. It's really, really good advice. It's a big topic, and it's something that we could talk for hours and hours and hours, as I'm sure you would agree. But I think just start small, and as you suggest, maybe with the glasses, and then you can start looking at light bulbs in your house and lamps and or the red light therapy and everything. Thank you so much, Daniel. This has been a really good discussion. I'm sure our listeners have certainly learned a lot, and opened our eyes, I guess, pardon the pun, to the importance of looking at our light environment from a health and wellbeing perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, everybody, and look forward to seeing you on our next edition of the Healthy Shift Worker podcast.
Yes.